why is it important for artists to set goals? I mean, so much of
Mm.
what we do is not even within our control. What does it matter if I set a goal to book a role on Broadway or not? It's not up to me. I'm not the one who casts me.
Yeah, I think that Josh always talks about this, and I do think it's true because it's about direction, right? So I think that the challenge is how do you have really strong goals and very clear and specific goals, but then you also have to remove because I think you make a great point. You know, so much is outside of your control, and more people, this idea just from people who I really respect. People are kind of saying you have to be open. You have to sort of be open to what comes and not everything. I do, somebody who tries to be more spiritual and also consider these things like, you know, life isn't a science, right? So there is an element of faith and there is an element of being open to what comes. However, setting really clear, specific goals does a couple things. Number one, it clarifies your values. So if you're saying just in general, I want to do theater, right? Or I want to do more of this, but then you have to come up with as Hasyam, you really emphasize a specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time sensitive goal, and you have to look at it like and see it. I think there's a the conversation that happens within you that goes like, "Well, is that what I want?" Like, "Is that actually what I want my life to look like?" We have all these ideas floating in our head, but when we set them down on paper and look at them, the image of them, I think it clarifies our values, number 1. Number 2, I do believe that, like, getting clear about goals and putting them on paper and looking at them, I do believe in sort of, cognitive bias or whatever that like you're going to start to do things if you're looking at your goals every single week, even every single day, you're going to start to see opportunities and ends that you were not seeing before, right? Because that goal is front and center. And the other thing is that it gives you ideas, right? So that this is the final point, and then I don't know if Josh wants to comment on it, but like if you do come up with a really clear and specific goal, like, I want, if I'm just saying, like, I want to do theater, okay. But if you were to say, like, I want to book, you know, I want to be a part of an original work that goes to Broadway in the next 5 years. And I start to break that down backwards and I start to do research on shows that have done that. Oh, maybe this means booking a show that is like, maybe either commercial off Broadway or maybe it's something at like New York Theater Workshop or something like that can transfer. Okay, so in 3 years, I want to be in like a very buzzy off Broadway show, either commercially or in New York Theater Workshop, something like that. Then, when you set that really clear and specific goal, you can work backwards because now you have framework to go, oh, well, who's the casting person in your theater workshop? Who are writers who work there often? Who are commercial off Broadway producers working all the time? Maybe I can produce this thing. Who are financiers in the space? So when you get really specific, it'll actually give you more ideas than just sort of keeping it too broad, right? Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I love what you said. You brought up direction, and I heard a video the other day. There's a word for that thing whenever you, like, set a goal or say you're like, "Oh, I wanna buy a Fiat 500," and all of a sudden you start seeing Fiat 500s
Right. I think
everywhere.
it's called not cognitive bias, but something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Cognitive
Yeah,
something.
it's something like that, folks. And so similarly, if you set a goal, like you said, to be in a specific production or specific theater or work with a specific person, all of a sudden, just because you set that goal and wrote it down, you are more likely to begin seeing those opportunities all around you. Um, Joshua, could you take us through the process of, let's say, I'm coming to Artist Strategy for help and I want to be a series regular on TV. Like that's my biggest dream as an actor. Could you take me through a process, maybe an abbreviated process of what setting that goal would look like or how to make sure that like I have a chance to make this thing happen?
Obviously, becoming a series regular, there's no A, B, C, D, E, F, G. If there were, there'd be a lot more series regulars and a lot more employed actors and happy people. So it's there is an art to it. But then you what when you start with something like that, Haciem, Essentially, the macro question you have to ask yourself is, well, what is that going to take? What does that mean, and what does that even have to take? So let me give you a super specific example, because you could go into relationships, you could go into from what Mike was saying about targeting casting, but let's just actually take experience. Because a lot of actors will say, "Oh, I wanna be a series regular," but they've never been on television. And they've done very little television. They've done very little screen work at all. So an example of taking that goal and how you might break it down into steps that might bring you closer to it is to simply go, well, let me get used to my relationship with the camera by way of self-producing something, actually. And I'm going to even use that self-produced project, by the way, to build some inroads into the television industry. So I might go, okay, 5 years, I want to be a series regular. And we work macro to micro and breaking down goals. So I might say, okay, so 3 years, I've booked a few TV things, if I've done no TV whatsoever. And in a year, I'm simply getting in the room. Okay, so we just have those long-term goals. But then the next year, getting back to the experience piece, might go, okay, so over the course of the next year, I'm going to produce 3 short films. And I'm gonna do that, and in doing that, I'm gonna give myself the experience of being on camera, learning my pros and cons, watching myself, asking people for feedback along the way. And again, as an offshoot to bring us closer to the TV piece, maybe I go and I'm gonna look at some associates that are working on television, casting associates or assistants that are working on shows that I'm interested in being on, and maybe I'll ask them to come in to my 3rd one. Once I've got my, a little more experience even as a producer so that I know what I'm doing, I'm gonna offer them $750 to help me cast 2 of the leads. So I'm gaining my experience, and I'm potentially building some relationships. And just to circle back, because again, it's a big question. Simply going, "I wanna be a series regular. What is that even going to potentially take?" And then, allowing the work to stem from that.
I really love that example because you took a huge lofty goal. Like many actors listening to the show, if they had one series regular contract in their entire careers, they'd be relatively satisfied, right? And feel like they relatively accomplished something. But you just broke that down to the point where you took this huge lofty goal to like produce a short film. Or even maybe before, like, the short film becomes a thing, like, connect with a casting associate. Like, we can all do that. Like, you can find their emails online, or you can hit them up on Instagram, and I've connected with a lot of casting professionals that way, particularly associates, who are a little easier to get in contact with. So I really love that process.
Hey guys, thank you for checking out The Actor's Instrument on YouTube. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a beat. You can follow us at Actors Instrument Podcast on all social media platforms. Till next time, y'all. Peace.